Hello, everybody. If you can see us and hear us okay, please type llama in the chat or let us know where you're viewing from today. Once we get a couple of comments, then we can go ahead and get started. So you can also just let us know that you can hear us and see us. Tell us how your day is going, how excited you are to start drawing today. Can everyone see us? Okay, we have some comments in the chat now. All right. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Oh yeah, we have people from Oregon, Minnesota, Canada. Excellent. Just give a moment to let everything start warming up here in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the reference photo in case you want to follow along. There you go. Oh, somebody from Argentina. Excellent. Okay. So hello, everybody. My name is Kitty, and I will be your host for today's Etcher Mini Workshop Preview. We are here with the wonderful Stephen Travers, who will teach us how to draw a French castle with ink and tone. So if you have questions, please put them in all capital letters in the chat so that I can see it better. And if the question is relevant to what Stephen is doing at the moment, then I will ask at that time. If not, I might hold it off until we do our question and answer session at the end. And also, if you are planning to follow along today, we would love to see your creations. And we have a private Facebook group. I'm going to put that link in the chat right now. And it's a really great place to share your work, especially if you don't want to put it out into the wide world. It's just for people who've taken our workshops or watched our demos. And if you post your work in the next couple of days, then Stephen might be able to take a look at them and make some comments and give you some feedback. So without any further ado, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be doing today?
Hi, well, welcome. Stephen Travers, I'm an Australian artist. It's morning here. I don't think it's morning for many of you, but welcome to this. We're going to be drawing a corner of a French castle. It's a castle in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, just outside of Paris. It was really one of the French king's castles before Versailles was built. Louis XIV was born here. I actually sat in this location outside a cafe and sketched this in a sketchbook just in pencil. But today we're using ink. I'm using just a Uni-Ball Eye micron pen, and then we're going to use some tone with Copic sketch markers, just 3 shades of neutral grey, N3, N4, and N5. So that's what we're doing. But before we do that, some of you may know me from Instagram, but I'm more known for these large architectural studies. I love Paris. I love the architecture of Paris. I do these grand buildings, but I've also taken to doing really some of the beautiful interiors of Paris, and trying to capture the light effects has been a bit of a challenge for me, but also some street scenes too. And again, lately I've been particularly trying to capture light effects using the Copic markers. And I also do some quicker drawings. So those large ones take me 5-6 hours to do, but these ones, sort of the line work, in about an hour. So, but today's going to be more of a challenge, because today I've got 20 minutes to draw this French chateau. So it's going to be a fast pace for me, and I'm sure it will be for you if you try and draw ahead. Now, just before I start, a couple of observation points. I might just use this drawing just because it's larger, but I'll draw from the smaller one. The first thing always is to find the eye level, because it just helps us with the perspective. So the eye level is easier when there's people around. It's basically through their eye levels, and the eye level gives us the horizontal line. across the drawing, and then the perspective lines get steeper as they move further away from the eye level. So that's just good to know. But here it's pretty straightforward because the ground's quite flat. So that's good. The other thing I like to do when I draw is I like to choose a starting point that I can use to kind of reference everything else. And this drawing, I think, has this nice kind of shape here. I'll aim to draw this carefully and get the proportions right, and then I can move quicker in all directions from it, using that as, if you like, my ruler for the rest of the thing. So that's how I'm starting. But goodness, it's 6 minutes up already, so I better stop jabbering and get drawing. Okay. Well, that line's too long for starters. Sorry, I've actually got the camera kind of a bit in my way here, but I'll be right. The hardest lines are always the first ones. I don't know if anyone else finds that in drawing, but I certainly do. Once I've got a few lines drawn, it gets a bit easier just to kind of work it. So I am going pretty fast here because, well, I know what's involved here. So this is the sort of sketching I would do if I were drawing this on location, if I was doing a location sketch. Now we need to, as we go up, this curve will become more and more pronounced. So we just want to make sure we allow for that. And that's partly what will give this a greater sense of realism if we capture those sorts of details. And again, the other thing is just trying to make sure that we keep things that are shapes that are stacked nice and straight. Because again, if they look wobbly like a children's block tower that's about to fall over it, I mean, it can have a certain charm, but it's usually not what we're after when we draw architecture in this way. We're normally wanting to capture some sort of effect fairly realistically. So yeah, we'll keep going to the top, I think, and we'll put this balustrade in. Gosh, you end up doing a lot of these. I learned that the word for these bits here are actually balusters, which makes sense on a balustrade. So you end up drawing a lot of balusters, and they're the sort of thing that can, the sort of detail that can give you trouble, I think, if you're not careful. And I find it best not to take too much trouble with them, but to really just suggest them. And again, with this little decorative detail here, certainly in the few minutes we've got, I'm not going to go to too much trouble with those. All right. So before I come down here, I'm going to move to the left. And again, I'm looking at this thinking, well, the distance from here to here is pretty much the distance from there to there, maybe slightly less. So, you know, I think that will do it. And so I want to get a line that's approximately level here. And there's a kink about there. I've probably come a little bit too far. Yeah, Kitty? So,
Stephen, basically what you're doing, instead of measuring or just eyeballing, you're kind of using the elements you've already drawn and using that to decide the sizes elsewhere? That's
right. Yep. Okay. Yep. So I'm referencing what I've drawn, which does mean it gets quicker as you go along. Okay. The other thing I do is when I have perspective angles, so this line comes out from there, but I use my pen to get a sense, and again, particularly with the first ones, because I find that if I just do it without actually doing that, I tend not make the angle strong enough. It works in real life too. You can hold the pen up in front of your eye on the actual build-in and then transfer it down onto the paper. Remarkably accurate. You wouldn't have thought it was a particularly accurate way of doing anything, but it works incredibly well. And again, this angle now is a lesser angle because it's moving down closer to the now here we have an awning coming out from the side of the building, and I haven't drawn down here. I've chosen to start further up simply because there's more detail down here, so it's and I like to draw the closest things first so that I'm not getting too many lines in front of other lines where I don't want them. And look, we might just also also whack this line in. I don't know whether you talk about whacking lines in, but I'm afraid it's just a fairly graphic. And again, here we are just really
and it looks like you need a certain amount of just go for it kind of confidence to put those lines down without overthinking it.
You're certainly doing a 20-minute drawing, Kitty, I tell you. As I said, this is actually not how I draw. I'm actually a very meticulous drawer usually, as people who've seen my Instagram account know. But it's fun, and I've actually been doing a live Instagram drawing once a week, and it's really because I want to pursue drawing in this way. And the only way to get better at anything in drawing is to practice. I'm a really big believer in that. I mean, I think it's easy to think, oh, if there's just a technique, just a hack I can learn. Hack seems to be the word that everyone likes to use these days. If there's just a hack, if I can just learn the trick that Stephen has. Actually, the trick Stephen has is probably about 3,000 hours of drawing in the last 2 years. That's the trick. And and again, I'm just going to suggest a very quick suggestion of a figure here, because there are these pedestrians in the front, and I think they're fairly important to get a sense of movement, and the fact that this is not a castle in a field, it's a castle directly across the road from a train station and busy part of this town on the outskirts of Paris. Okay, so now we'll get, okay, so I can see I've put that awning just a little bit too high, but and the more I draw, the more I've become a believer in not worrying about mistakes too much when I make them. A mistake will never look as bad as just when you've made it. And invariably, particularly in a drawing like this with a lot of detail, we can hide mistakes either with other things we do to take the focus off the mistake, or simply when we add all the detail in the scene. That one line that's out of place, or two lines that's out of place, it's not going to be so obvious. And of course, other people won't be looking at it the way we are. So, all right, before I move across here, I'm just going to commit these perspective lines here. And these are the sorts of lines where it's really handy to do this measuring, because it is really hard in real life to actually make these lines as extreme as they need to be. Here now, the bottom is kind of level with this. And so is this all making sense to you all? I hope it is. And so these windows are closer to us than these these people are.
And Stephen,
Yeah.
so with all these perspective lines and details like the people, that's something you're going to be going into more in the mini workshop. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
Okay.
something that we'll have a little more time because the drawing won't take me a huge amount more time to draw than this one, but we'll have a lot more time for me just to explain the process. It's going to be a more complex perspective in the mini workshop drawing, and so will be. So there'll be more time for me to actually sort of explain the process and whatnot. It's good to kind of draw a bit of a crowd in, I think, when we're doing these things.
Really helps to give a sense of scale.
Yeah, very, very much so. Okay, I'm going to move across now and we'll commit to the other half of the chateau. Now, again, I'm looking at from there to there is going to be about, from there to there to here. And of course, the other thing to remember when we draw is no one's going to be comparing your drawing to the reference photo or to the scene. They're only going to be looking at your drawing. So that should take some of the pressure off us. That, in a sense, what I want to do is I want to make my drawing look credible. And if at times I've got to just, negotiate it. So I'm not worried about that line going in the wrong place because I know no one's going to notice that at the end. And I'll put this line in, which again comes there, and I'll just, because again, that line's becoming shallower. So you can see here we've got the angle of these lines get steeper as we go up. And that's the important thing, is to keep this pattern. And here, the line's, going to be straight because that's pretty much on the, and once you realize that's the way it's meant to work, it's really hard to draw a line that then is out of place in terms of perspective. It's just a case of realizing how it works and then being alert. And after every drawing, I sit down and I have a look at it and I think, okay, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and what would I do differently if I were doing this again next time? And that's a very important process, I think, because what it means is I kind of start further ahead. It's like being given a head start in a race with my next drawing. I've got these things that I'm already looking out for before I start drawing. And so it's not being down on yourself, but there's no point pretending that something looks right if it doesn't, because I don't know about you, but as a drawer of architecture, I always want it to look right. We don't want our drawings to be like a singer who they kind of keep hitting wrong notes. And even though most of the notes are right, it's really hard to relax with the song if you're thinking that any minute they're going to hit a wrong note. And I think visually we can have the same thing happen with our drawings. They can be mostly really accurate, but if there are too many things that just aren't quite right, it just creates this sort of uneasy feeling as we look at it, and it just makes it hard to relax and enjoy the scene, because we're kind of, if we're not seeing a few things that aren't quite right, we're kind of expecting to. And so so we want to get as many of these details correct as we can. And the good thing about architecture is it is very ordered. Like, I mean, it's I wouldn't normally draw these lines in, and you can see why, because I've just made a big mess of them, and now I'm not using them anyway. But once we understand the rules of perspective, the idea of the angles, and foreshortening in particular, I think foreshortening is one of the most important things to learn. Then when we're just observing our drawing, observing our photo reference or the scene in front of us, it's easier to see these things and therefore to draw them if we know to expect them. And so that's why I think it is good to study perspective, but then really to work at just drawing what's in front of us and not worrying too much about it, because we'll see these things in front of us. Okay, so here we have, I'm now going to draw in I've stopped looking at the time, which is dangerous. Okay, it's 10:20.
You're good. You're good. Keep going.
Okay, popping in this lamp post. Now, when we get things like signposts and whatnot, look, sometimes if we draw everything in, it can end up looking cluttered. But equally, if we leave everything out, I mean, I call them street furniture. Things like signposts and garbage bins and bus seats and things, they are the stuff of parked cars. They are the stuff of streets. And so if we want to capture a feel of where we're in a street, we need to put some of these things in. I hated drawing people and didn't think I could draw people at all. And so I never used to draw people. And every one of my streetscapes looked like the zombie apocalypse had come. And there was no one left. And I realized after a while that, gosh, I'm going to have to at least learn to suggest people if I want my streets to look like streets, because streets have people in them. And so that was something I had to do. So look, we'll just get this building in, and because I want to fling some tone on this, just so we do that. And again, we're just working at getting this angle right. Gosh, this is my fastest drawing ever, I reckon.
I personally find it very impressive. I am absolutely amazed. When you showed me this picture originally, I was like, no, you can't do it in 20 minutes. But look at you go.
The one I showed you, I didn't do in 20 minutes.
I know. But this is so good in such a short period of time.
Okay, this railing, look, railings are the sort of things, raw time, the sort of things where often they end up being a weak part of. Now, the thing is, there is so much detail here in a railing that we can't draw all the details. So what we want to do is to just suggest that there's a pretty pattern in the lace work here, in the ironwork here. And so you're trying to create the effect of a pattern, not the actual pattern, because we can't do that. So that's just what I was doing there. So if you want to compare it with the picture, there's no relationship. And I'll just put oops. So this man with 3 legs, I'll make him a large man, and now we've just incorporated that 3rd leg. So again, that's one advantage of doing this in such a loose way. It also means that we can have a bit more play around. Okay, so let's get some tone on this. I just leave that bit a bit blank just because there isn't time, I don't think. So I'm using my Copic sketch markers. I'll start. Oh, good grief. Good grief, good grief, good grief. How many of you saw this? Come on. Leave a comment. Leave a comment and Kitty can tell me. Who noticed that I forgot the tower?
I wasn't going to say anything.
So, Kitty, you noticed?
I did, but I thought maybe you were purposely omitting it, as sometimes people do when they're on location and they don't have a lot of time to sketch.
The tower is the one bit you would do.
That is true.
Now, you might leave out some of the windows that are just the same as other windows, because you think, oh, well, I can do that window. I can do that window another time. You know, I can fill in all the windows. When
I'm reading the chat and people are saying, I noticed, I was wondering, and yes, I was waiting for the tower.
Yeah, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if I meant to, but I can't. Oh, I've got the wrong one. I wanted number 3. So now I've got N3.
And somebody said, oh, you're just using artistic license.
Yeah.
Stephen, what tone is that one? What number is that, Copic?
This is N3.
N3?
N3, yeah.
Okay. which is a neutral tone.
Yeah. It's tricky with these because they do show up differently with photography to how they look in real life. So it's always the challenge for me, the decisions with my say my YouTube, not my YouTube, my Instagram things. Do I make choices that will look good on Instagram or which will look good in life? Do other people? I'd be interested to know for anyone watching at the moment who posts things on Instagram, do other people here have that same issue? Do I draw so that it looks good when it's photographed, or so that what I'm drawing looks good?
That's an excellent question.
Because it is like if your audience is basically online, all my drawings are just in a big pile in the lounge room. So the people who see these are the people on Instagram. So in the sense, if they're my audience, do I create something that will give them the best chance of seeing something because I know the way the different Copic markers will photograph?
Yeah.
Or do I make choices where it looks good if you see the original, although only my wife and I will ever see the originals at this point? Actually, that's not true. I actually put an application in for an exhibition in a local government-run gallery in April, and I got accepted. So I'm just going to...
Is that a number 5?
This is the number 5, so I've jumped. I'm going to use the 4, but I thought, look, I'll just... Sometimes it's very helpful to... It's very helpful to get some darker tones in early. Sometimes I'll start with a 5 or 6 as my first tone, and it's to force me to commit to being bold with the tones. If you start with a light tone, it's easy just to kind of play around with really light tones, and then it's when you've created a light palette, in a sense, it's then harder to be bold. And by nature I'm quite conservative and timid in my color choices and whatnot. So sort of I come from a long line of a long history of being afraid to spoil something, and there's something worse than a drawing that's really turning out, is there? Because then at some point you become terrified you'll wreck it. Whereas if something's really quick and rough, you don't have to have that same pressure. So again, we're just trying to create contrast here. And my number 4 has...
And Stephen, in the mini workshop, you're going to be talking about why you're using darker colors where you are to get that depth and perspective and everything. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And of course, there'll be time for me to talk about whatever the people want to ask me as I draw. I mean, I have reasons why I do everything. I'm not particularly intuitive. I'm a sort of thought out kind of. I'm fairly analytical. So most things I do, I have a reason for doing them. So if you ask me why I'm doing something, I can probably tell you. It just may not occur to me that anyone's interested in that. It's easy to think people are going to be interested in things that in the end they're not, and there are actually other issues they'd rather know about. So
Stephen, can I ask you some questions from the chat while you're still working on that?
Absolutely. I'm just sort of doing the mopping up at the moment. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some great questions here. Well, more like comments that are turning into questions here. So one of the comments is, you're so lucky to be able to draw straight lines. For some reason, I just can't do it. Do you have any tips besides thousands of hours of practice? Do you have any tips for being more confident with making straight lines?
I do. I actually have a YouTube video on drawing straight lines.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that. Yeah.
So please go and have a look at it. But I will tell you now, I think the most important trick is you watch the point where you want the line to end, rather than watching the point of the pen, and draw with as much of your body as you possibly can. So when we write with our fingers, basically. And I think that tends to focus our pen experience often right down here. When we draw, we want to draw with our whole arm, and even our whole, when I draw really big lines, especially if they're straight, I'll move my whole body. I'll draw with my torso to help me, because I actually want to lock all of my hand, my wrist into place and just draw a nice long straight line. Sometimes particularly if I'm drawing across an A4 sheet or A3 sheet, I might even put a tiny dot where I want the line to end up. And no one's going to see that dot, whether I meet up with it or not, but it gives me the spot to focus on in my mind where I'm trying to go. So, but yes, drawing, and everyone has a direction as well where it's easier for them to draw a straight line, or a curved line for that matter. And for some people, they come down more easily. Other people go across. I do best with a 45-degree line. So not when I'm filming, because I've got to keep everything straight. But sometimes, I'll turn the page. I'll actually more likely shift position so that my body's in the position where I can draw that line the most comfortable. So that's the other thing, and that changes for every person, to have a sense yourself of what's the easiest thing for you. And you only get that from practice. But there is no shortcut to practice. I mean, I'm telling you the ways I do it, but then I become good at doing it that way because of all the practice. And I think the best thing is to do lots of small drawings. I used to do really big paintings. I'll just show you one of my paintings. I've got a little one here. This is what I did for 10 years when I started out, before I did any drawing. I've only been actually drawing for 3 years, but I did paintings of Australian plants, and I used to do enormous ones, like 6-foot ones. And then I learned that if I did lots of little ones, I could learn lessons a lot more quickly. And because they were small, I could be more adventurous in what I did. And I think the same thing can work with drawings. If you want to be learning things in drawings, do lots of smallish drawings that, firstly, the line work is a bit easier, and it's easier to see the effect. It's easier to do things with tone. And yeah, you can just learn the lessons faster, I think, doing relatively small work.
Great.
Look, I mean, I haven't finished this bit, but I'm just looking at the time, Kitty. So.
Well, we have a couple more questions for you.
Sure, I'm happy to answer. Okay, I'll keep drawing if there are questions to answer.
Yeah, I've got a couple more here, and I think they're very important ones, especially. Absolutely. So I know that you and I discussed this, so I'm actually really excited that this came up, because I would love for everybody to hear what you have to say about this. Sure. So the comment is, I like this technique, but my forte is painting, not the drawing. I copy more than drawing. Sorry,
the forte is what? Sorry?
Is painting, not drawing. And they said they copy more than drawing. And we had a discussion about copying versus observation and learning to draw what you see. So I would love for you to explain that to them.
I mean, like, I actually started painting in oil paints. I've actually never really done watercolors at all. I've been amazed how much what I learned doing 10 years of just solid oil painting, how much of that flowed directly into my drawing. And it was almost like I'd been drawing for 10 years, I felt, even though I hadn't. Because I think in terms of observation and trying to create an effect, see, when you're painting, you're trying to create an effect using paint. And how do you do that? When you draw, you're trying to create an effect using paint. And all the skills of observation that you need when you paint, you need to have those skills of observation when you draw. Now, you're not having to observe the color so much, but in terms of outline and shape and proportion, and just the challenge of creating an effect using a particular medium. So the challenge of creating a sense of 3 dimensions of depth, using a pencil and using tone. How do we do that? The one thing about a photo is a photo is fairly flat and it tends to not have much depth, and we need to put that depth back in when we're drawing. And there are you know, ways I do that and whatnot. But yeah, I think just keep doing it. Just keep. I mean, it depends a bit how you paint too, and I don't know whether you mean sort of watercolor more than, when people say painting, I think of oil paint because that's what I do. But I think probably watercolor is more common. But you still need to have outline and to draw, and even if you do that directly with the paint. Yeah, I mean, I find it a big challenge drawing directly in ink. That can be scary. My big drawings, you know, I do meticulous pencil outlines for these, which I then erase before I put the tone on. But so these are I grid the paper and I grid the photo and I transfer it all carefully, and I'm all very exact and as precise as I can be. So to draw directly with no pencil, with it's like riding your bike with no training wheels. I mean, it is a bit of a, it is scary when you first do it. I'm just starting to get a bit used to it, but it's always scary at the start too. Once the drawing progresses, it's not so bad. And look, and again in here, I'm not trying to go to great detail in here. I'm just trying to create an effect that there's stuff in that corner, because it's not really the focal point. But if it's a big white space, it ends up looking the focal point. So I just really want to get rid of that feeling that there's nothing in there. And I left this little figure white, and those sorts of details are good because that's like someone catching the light. And so those things also create a sense of depth, that there's this space with dark light in front, there's the space that there's shadow in the distance, but there's also the feeling that there's light going through in the middle between the two. And so those sorts of things, little tricks also, and should be worth putting in. I think it's actually a man, yeah, but that figure is worth putting in even if it's not in the reference photo. So they're the little things where you make adjustments to make the photo, to make the drawing look good, rather than, you know, there's a point where you leave the reference photo behind and you make your drawing look good, because, as I said before, no one's looking at the reference photo in the end. They're going to be looking at your drawing. So we want our drawing to look good. And this has a much streakier effect in terms of my use of tone than normal. But again, some people like that. My children often like my paintings when they're half done, because they feel they have a nicer, rougher, kind of looser feel, and they think I over-finish them. And so it's exactly the same thing can happen with our drawing. So in the end, they're the choices that the artists make, which help to define your style and what makes my drawings look different from someone else's drawings. But I certainly am really enjoying creating this looser kind of style. So look, I hope it's been fun. I don't know if anyone's been able to keep up drawing up, because it's so fast. I don't know what Etcher thinks us artists are.
You're drawing with a pen, not a magic wand.
But can I just say,
yes.
can I just show you what we'll be drawing for the mini workshop? I really hope you can join us.
Yeah, please do tell us what we're going to be learning.
We're still in France. We're at the Chateau de Versailles, Louis XIV's masterpiece, and we're drawing just this section next to the Royal Chapel here, which has just been renovated, actually. It looks beautiful now. But we're just drawing this little front bit because it gives us good practice with perspective, with some architectural detail. We have some these sculptures in the pediment. So just drawing the effect of those without having to draw little figures. We've got, again, also a nice railing here, which we can't hope to draw in detail. So how do you represent that? Got a crowd of people. We've got some nice shadow work. And this actually did take me about the time I'll have to draw it in the workshop. So I'm feeling we're not going to be rushed. I'll have more time to talk. But this is the sort of thing I hope we'll all finish up with, and I'll step you through my thinking as I go. And as I said, directly with ink, there's no pencil outline here. I'm committing myself. So have a look at the reference photo, and it'd be helpful if you think of where would I start to draw this and why, because I'll certainly be explaining my choices in the mini workshop. So really hope you can join us. It should be a lot of fun.
Excellent. So really, we're going to just be expanding on all of those techniques that we learned today, more shading, more how to observe, perspective. And the mini workshop is an hour and a half long. It's a step-by-step tutorial, and you'll really get to delve deeper into all these techniques that we covered today. And it's also a really wonderful way to support Stephen and his art. So you can find the registration link in the chat right now. It's already there. And also, if you would like to share, if you did follow along and you would like to share what you've done, we would love to see it. So I'm going to put our tags into the chat. Or even if you just decide to play with some of these techniques that Stephen taught you today, try your hand at it even before the mini workshop. And that way you can come up with some questions to ask too. And also, I would love it if you would answer that question that Stephen put to you as far as how do you finish your pictures? Do you do it so it looks good in real life, or do you do it for Instagram and online? Who is your audience? Who are you painting for? And if you can put that in the comments section underneath the YouTube video, so not in the chat, but in the comments, that would be great. And I'm going to bring Stephen back up here.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. So that's great. And look, as I said, if you do, I do have that YouTube video on drawing straight lines. I have another one on when you make mistakes, drawing directly with ink. So if they're two topics that, and look, it's really just my personal experience and how, but I think they're both really helpful, and particularly the making mistakes one should resonate, because being afraid of making mistakes will stop us from doing things. It stopped me for about 30 years. So it's a really important thing to overcome, and just to step out there and take the risk, because you will improve. You will improve if you keep practicing. So get your pen out and be prepared to make mistakes. No one needs to see it unless you show it to them. Don't be afraid of seeing it yourself. That's the thing.
And also in the chat, I just dropped the link for our feedback survey. We would really love to hear your opinions of what we've done today, and so we can continue to improve our content for you. So your answers are anonymous. We would really love to hear what you think. So that's in the chat right now. And then one last time, I'm going to drop in the links for the mini workshop and our Facebook group in case you'd like to share there. Put that in right now. And then we do these free live demos every couple of days. So please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date and be alerted for when we go live. We also have our Make More Art podcast, product demonstrations, and a lot more. And thank you, Stephen, so much for being so generous with your techniques and your insights today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just I really hope many of you can join us for the mini workshop. And if you know other people who draw who haven't caught this morning, then please let them know, send them the link, tell them you think it'd be worthwhile if you think it might be for them, because it's great to have reasons just to make us pick up a pen and to draw. Some personalities, like I will put off drawing every morning when I sit down, and when I sit down to do it, I'll put it off because I'm somehow afraid it won't work out, or yeah. I don't know. And sometimes we just need a push. No, just start. And something such as a mini workshop that's live streamed and you draw alongside, it can be something that helps people actually do it. So if you know someone who thinks about art more than they actually do art, and you think they should do more art, tell them. And that'd be great if they could join us. Thanks.
Excellent. And we have people thanking you for the lesson today, saying thank you. Also saying that what you've done looks pretty detailed to them. And thank you for the lesson and your words. Excellent. Okay, so our time is up, and thank you everyone for watching today. And until we see you next time, make more art. Bye, everybody.